And you should be a presenter now, Juno. And you're muted right now as well.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yep, we can hear you and see your slides.
Awesome.
Should go.
Let me find my webcam and then should be all set up. All right, can you guys see me? It's not important. It's not super important for this section, but it is for the next.
Everything looks great.
Awesome. Hello, I'm Juno or JunoSec on Twitter. Most of you guys probably know me from the Dallas InfoSec scene. I run DC214, Dallas's DEF CON group, as well as I've presented at the local B-sides and at Dallas Hackers Association. But before I actually moved to Dallas in August of 2018 from Alaska. When I was in Alaska, I went to college studying computer science and economics. It was in college when I got interested in cybersecurity. I started competing in CTFs. In my free time, I breathe fire and also play music, which I'll be talking about in a sec. All right. So my first topic is Reconnaissance and Exploitation with the NMAP scripting engine. I first became familiar with the NMAP scripting engine when during my first internship on a red team. I'd used NMAP before in CTFs just sort of to scan things and find out what they were, but this really expands the functionality and it's relatively easy and understandable to use. Now I'm going to try to do a live demo here instead of slides, but if that doesn't work out, I do have slides for you. So here I have a Kali VM and a Metasploitable VM. If you're not familiar with what they are, Metasploitable is just an instance that's very insecure and can be used for practice exploits. And Kali is everybody's favorite hacking OS, especially for beginners. I know someone out there is going to come in and say, no, you self-compile Arch or nothing, and this is the beginner talk. So here you can see my terminal. So I'm just going to start by making sure I can talk to my Metasploitable VM. The IP has not changed, so If
it's at all possible, could we get the fonts to be a bit larger so that people on the presentation can see a little easier?
Ooh, let me see. That is a very good question. If anyone knows how to Zoom, please chime in. This is, let's see, preferences. I'm not sure. How hard is it to see?
Somebody's saying that if you hit Control++, it might do it. Apparently not.
Hold on, let me try it on.
Also try under View, they're saying.
Oh, cool. Thank you, comments. Aha, thank you, comments section. All right, does that, I can even.
That should be absolutely wonderful, thank you.
Awesome, cool. Thank you for that. What is my IP there? So if you're unfamiliar with Ifconfig, I can see the address of my Metasploitable VM 192.168.56.101. Oh. Then I'm just going to ping it to make sure it's still there, because when I was practicing this demo, I was accidentally doing everything to the wrong IP and was very confused as to why nothing was working. All right, so now that we know that's there, I'm going to start by just running a basic NMAP scan against my VM to see what's there. And I'm using the verbose flag just so I can see every step that it's taking. And so what this is doing for the uninitiated is it's running a ping scan where it attempts to ping a bunch of the most common ports at that IP address. And as it goes through there, you can see it discovering a bunch of different open ports. And there will be provided, and so here now we can see a bunch of different the different ports that are open and the services running on them. And so that starts to give us a good idea. That's what will start to give us a good idea of what to look for in terms of vulnerabilities. So next, I'm actually going to use one of the most, I don't know. I'm going to take that a step further by running a service version scan, which will do the same thing but show the version it thinks that each of these services is running. And from that version, we can start to look at actually the individual exploits that might be available for each of those things. Now, this is going to take a second to run. So if anyone has any questions while things are running, please just shout them out to me and I'll start to answer them while we wait.
We don't have anything in Q&A just yet, but if you're checking Slack, there might be some.
Oh boy, I don't have that. I don't have that up, but this is
I'll try to keep track for you then.
Oh, awesome, thank you. But while this runs, a little bit about more about what it's actually trying to do is it's trying to oh, there we go. But it's trying to complete the entire connection and start to fingerprint what it actually is. So here we see the port, whether it's open or closed, the service, and then the particular version it's running. Now, in sort of a regular beginning pen test, what I'd then do is start plugging all of these versions into something like exploitDB to determine which like Metasploit module I should use. But we can actually sort of continue along this path. We can actually continue along this path with the by starting to use the NMAP scripting engine. So we can see up here that this is running SSH. For those who aren't familiar, SSH allows you to log into the terminal of a different device from your own. And one of the most prevalent NMAP scripting engine tools is something that will attempt to brute force the credentials for SSH. So first, to start, let's figure out where actually the NSE scripts are, which we can run them without knowing where they are, but this will help us out later once we try to make our own. So just using locate command, it's going to pull up all of these scripts in user share and map scripts, and we can scroll through, and there's a lot. So we're going to want to dial that back a little bit. I'm actually going to search for just particularly the ones to do with SSH. And this gives us a smaller amount to start to deal with. So the one we're looking for right here is the SSH root script, and that's the one that will, that's the script that's already built into the scripting engine that will attempt to brute force SSH authentication. So by starting to run it, oops. Oh boy, what did I knock over? Oh, that's fine, I need that for later. You can't see my desk, but I have a pile of I have a bass bow and a bunch of other things, and it's all very precarious. So we're going to run NMAP, and then we're going to look at port 22, which is the port that SSH is running on, and pull a script, and that's going to be SSH root, and now what this is doing here is this is running it without any settings. This is using the default dictionary, and it's going to attempt a dictionary attack against SSH. So as we run it, we can see it's trying different username password combinations based on the dictionary: root, admin, administrator, administrator. And then it starts going through root 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, I'm not going to let this actually run forever because I know the credentials for Metasploitable, and we don't need to sit here for 20 minutes while it attempts to guess it. So I'm going to stop this right here, and I'm going to actually run this with a custom dictionary that I built earlier. So just to show you what's in my custom dictionary, if you're unfamiliar with Metasploitable, the admin credentials are MSF_admin. So I'm going to make just a list. Here we show root, admin, Juno, and MSF_admin. You can use these custom dictionaries. Say you've downloaded something like RockQ that has a bigger list of passwords people have actually used, or if you have a list of passwords that you believe that user is more likely to use. So, and in case you want to see, I also have the same thing in passwords. Root, admin, Juno, MSF_admin. All right, so now that I have that, I'm going to run it. Let me pull up the same command and show you how I change it. So it's still going to be on port 22 for SSH, and still going to be the same script, but we're going to add script arguments. Oops, script -args. This really just tests my ability to type. I think my elementary school typing teacher would not be proud. And so we're setting the user database to usernames.list and the password DB to passwords.list. And we're leaving the IP address the same. And so this is going to run. You see it comparing what I put in. And so now here at the bottom, we see it's up. And for the account MSF_admin and MSF_admin is valid credentials. So we've performed a successful brute force attack against Metasploitable. And in case we want to double check, we can now SSH type in MSF_admin, and here we are. All right, so one of the coolest things about the NMAP scripting engine, I think, is its user community, and so in addition to the scripts that already exist in the NMAP scripting engine, there are a lot of people who have posted things they've built out on GitHub, And we're actually going to look at a full-on vulnerability scanner called Vulners that a user created, and I'll have the GitHub link and where to clone and how to clone the GitHub, how to clone that repository in my presentation later if you want to look at it. But so I'm just going to show you how to run a full vulnerability scan against my system using just the scripting engine. So we've got a script, and since I already downloaded this into the correct area, it still runs like one of the scripts. It's called NMAP vulners. And for most of these scripts, you need to have the service version flag on, because most everything runs off of the version of what's running there. Without that, it wouldn't actually see which services were running and the version in order to determine what CVEs correlate with them. Oh, I can't type. Let's try that, actually spelling NMAP correctly. And now we let it run. And so this one's going to take a second, but essentially what it's doing is it's running a service version scan against my Metasploitable VM, and then comparing those versions to, I believe this uses ExploitDB to see what CVEs align with those versions of those versions of the software running on that. Actually, what I can do to speed this up a bit is I'm going to have it run against specific ports that we already know are open, because we actually already did this reconnaissance earlier. So port, let's see, I know we had 21, 22, 23, 5, 53. I should just pull up my list. Let me pull up my list of what ports were actually open. 80 is a good one to look at. And so this will just show us a few of them. Well, that didn't like what I did. 20 comments. I'll just run the whole thing. Sometimes my live demos don't like me.
Always the risk you run,
But
right?
while that, oh yeah. Well, while that loads, I do actually have the results, or what the results of that begin to look like up. So let me throw that up here real fast. So this is, oops. So this is what it starts to look like. So we can see on port 21 the version of FTP that's running on it, what type of SSH is running, and then all of the vulnerabilities that are associated with that version. And we can see the same thing here. And this has the CVE number, and then even how to access the CVE on their own website. So this, the cool thing about Vulners is this is a script created by just someone who, and I have his name in my citations, which I'll give out for due credit. But this was a script created by a community member. So I'm going to start to break down what goes into a NSE script, so that you can potentially go write one of your own. So these are written in Lua. If anyone's familiar with Lua, I was not super familiar with Lua until I started researching this a few days ago, and it's not that painful. It's to pick up. If you can code in Python, you can definitely figure Lua out. So this is a script to find the owner of an OpenTCP port by querying the authentication server. And so the head of the script has the meta information with the descriptions, categories, dependencies. Now, because this script is relatively simple, I actually don't have, the author actually doesn't have arguments and usage in there, but this is where that would go. But this output description here shows what the output will be. And next is the rule, and this just decides whether or not it's even possible to run the script. So this is usually based on the type of rule and the host and port information passed to it. In the case of this script, it's a little bit complicated. To decide whether to run the identification script against a given port in the first place, we need to know if there's even an authentication server running on that target machine. So it should run only if the currently scanned TCP port is actually open, and if port 113, where the auth server usually is also open. So unfortunately, one limitation of the NMAP scripting engine is that it only gives information about the current port. So we're actually going, we find the local auth port and then use the NMAP get port state function. If this port was never scanned, then it'll return null. And so we'll then check to see if it's in that table. If it's null, then we skip this action, then we skip and don't run the rest of the script. But if it is there, we can continue to run the script. And then the action is the major functionality of the script. And here it first connects to the port where we expect to find the identification server. And then it'll connect to the port that we want information about, that being 113. And so in order to do this, it's going to create two socket options by calling nmap new socket. And then for this entire thing, we just have a try except error handling catch function, so that it'll close if failure. That's right here, if failure is detected. And so then at this point we can we'll start to call connect to actually attempt to make connections using the object methods. And then we actually wrap the entire thing in a try call, which will turn our entire thing into a catch function if something goes wrong. And so I believe that's, so that's the majority on reconnaissance and exploitation with the NMAP scripting engine. I'm going to minimize this, and see if this is still running. Do you have any questions about this portion of the evening, or should we talk about music? Oh, there we go. Go ahead.
Someone was asking if you would use the -A flag, or would that miss important information that SV would show?
Honestly, I'm not sure, because I've always thought of A as a combination of SV and O, which shows the OS. So I want to say that it would work. For this, one way to find out, unless it packages the information differently. I'll let this run in the background, and we can always come back to it later. Are there any other questions about
Yeah,
this?
somebody wondered if you had written your own custom scripts before.
I do not have one that is working. That I've written myself. I've modified ones. The one that I showed you, the one that I showed you that finds the owner of the open TCP port. That's not one that I've written, but I've modified them. For a lot of it, I've changed. Like for example, the SSH brute force one. I have one that I've modified to add time changes in between attempts, just to see if I could. But I have not yet written one from scratch. Oh, so yes, this works with -A flag. Cool.
Somebody has an out there left field question. I studied economics as undergrad and I want to get into InfoSec. I seem to catch a hint that you are also an economist. Do you have any pointers?
Oh boy. Well, I actually got into speaking in InfoSec and then got moved from my very step-by-step data job to a job as a real blue teamer, in part because I started speaking at cons. And this is actually sort of my first technical talk because every other talk I've given has actually been on economics. My big focus of interest is on game theory and behavioral economics, and using that to apply to social engineering scenarios or even computer scenarios has helped a lot. So I think, and if you're really passionate about economics as well as InfoSec, finding what you think is really, really exciting and then telling anyone who will listen about it. Raise your hand if I've come up to you at a con, especially in the after party, and started drawing graphs and waving them in your face. I know there's a few of you out there. I hope that helped.
Absolutely. And I'm not seeing any new questions, so we can go ahead and move on to the music portion.
All right. This is so one of my many hobbies, as I mentioned, is as a musician. And when I was thinking about what to do, I thought, it kind of I could get up and play the violin, but that doesn't really teach anything new. So I'm actually going to talk about a little bit of the physics behind sound and how we can take a vibrating string and amplify it and turn it into a stringed instrument. And as a part of this, there will definitely be demos. I think you can see my bass behind me. So first, we're going to start by what is sound? How do you actually produce a tone? Because noise is essentially a very jumbled around sound wave. Because noise is there's nothing really uniform about the wave for just noise. But a tone is very, very regular with waves the same size and distance apart. And in order to generate a tone, you need to prevent waves from bouncing back and forth and canceling each other out. And by doing that, tone is actually a standing wave, which we'll get to in a second. I don't know how well you can see this, but I'm going to go with it. This is just a rubber band that I cut. And so you can start to see how this vibrates, and you can probably hear it a little bit. It creates just a very, very basic tone. Well, and that's because a string or a string-like thing that's contained on either end creates the perfect container for a standing wave. And so a little bit about how a standing wave works is on the string we have antinodes, which are the parts that move up and down the most, and nodes, which are the spots in the middle where the wave doesn't move at all. And that taut string is the perfect, as I said, the perfect container for the standing wave. And you can see at the bottom we have this is just the whole string vibrating. The nodes are just where my finger is. And one thing, by actually playing harmonics, we can create halves, thirds, and fourths. And those, essentially what the harmonic does, and I'll demonstrate in a second, is forces a node, and that plays different tones along with the same tone along the octave that you actually hear when you hear a note, but they blend in and they give it its resonance or timbre. And I'm going to take my headphones off real fast and grab my bass and demonstrate a harmonic. All right, so this is my bass, Denali, named after the mountain. And so when I play the E string, and the way, if you're curious, a bow creates sound. If I pluck the bass, it vibrates the string, and a bow just provides continuous vibration. So the harmonic on the bass, there's a harmonic about here, which instead of pressing the string down to create a note, hold on, let me put my headphones back on real fast. You can see the bass, correct?
Yes, we can see it just fine.
Okay, cool. So do you hear the difference here? What that is I'm holding the string still in one place. And that creates a harmonic that forces a note halfway down the string, and you hear the tone that's playing that's an octave up. All right. And now for changing notes, I realize I should have the bass back up here. There are different ways to change notes, either tension, length, or thickness. And so with length, by changing, let me grab the bass again. So by changing the length of the string is simply playing a note. So playing like. With each note, with each note that goes up, I'm shortening the string. The string gets shorter as I move my hand up. Now the thing is, if you look at the bass real fast, you see each of the strings are about the same length and they're about the same thickness. Where they differ, or sorry, they're about the same tension. Where they differ is actually in thickness. The E string at the bottom here is a lot thicker than the G string, and that means it moves more slowly, creating that lower tone. I can also adjust the tension. Let me move it back. I can also adjust the tension using these here. This was used to tune the bass to set it at the correct to set each string at the correct tension. Hi. Let's see, what do I have next? Oh, so for amplify, so if we start with our very basic string, let me step back. So I'm actually in the camera to start. So if we start with our basic string, this gives a very, very quiet tone. And the basics of amplification is, well, make something bigger vibrate. And I feel like the best way to do this is to go back to my true bluegrass roots and to set up a wash tub bass. So this is going to take a second. I'm here. Oh boy. So I don't know if you heard the wash tub here hitting the wall. You already heard it starting to sing out. And so I have the string here, which when taut and plucked does vibrate, and it's attached to this wash tub, which so now when the string vibrates, the wash tub vibrates as well. So sorry for the noise. I'm going to try and be as gentle as possible, setting this down by the microphone. Wash tub bass is actually a perfectly valid instrument. There are actually versions of this instrument in almost every culture. And I just have a pillow that I'm placing underneath the bass, underneath the wash tub in order to hold it off the ground. It will just help the sound amplify a little bit more. All right. So when placed here, this stick allows the string to become taut. So depending on where you learned it from, there are actually a couple of different ways to play a wash tub bass. I believe the most traditional method is by actually tilting the stick here. Oh boy, back and forth. Whoa, sorry. I'm gonna tighten this real fast. I've had a bit of trouble attaching the string to the wash tub, but so by leaning it back, stay on. I don't know if you can actually hear this as well as I can. But by leaning it back, it adds more tension to the string, which creates a higher tone. Many individuals build very much more complex upright basses with proper fingerboards on the top, which we will, or upright wash tub basses, which we'll actually talk about in a second. All right, and I'm back. So where were we? So essentially for louder noise, make a bigger thing vibrate, and that is essentially the cornerstone of where modern instruments come from. As we can see on the next slide, here's actually a diagram that someone built for a upright wash tub bass. So this is still a homemade instrument with a wash tub as the main body. This is actually ingeniously done with a lawnmower handle as the fingerboard, and then a bridge like we'd see in a regular stringed instrument, and a chair leg to hold it up. And compare that with the diagram I have next to it, where we have that shows the top of an instrument. It shows the bridge, and underneath it there's a sound post and a bass bar. And what that does is the strings vibrate the bridge, which vibrates the rest of the instrument, and the sound post goes through to the other side in order to create in order to make it louder. So I'm going to grab a fiddle because of course I can. Standing in the rubble. pile of instruments in my apartment playing fiddles. So the way it works, I'm gonna grab this to bring it a lot closer to the camera, so you can see the strings and the bridge. And so this allows us to vibrate the full instrument instead of just having these strings playing fiddles. So essentially, we've got the strings, we've got the stick, and we've got the body, but this allows more vibration of the body. Which allows us different tone. Now the last main difference between different types of instrument is the size and what it's made of. The fiddle and the bass are actually very similar shape, very similar material, but just due to sheer size, including the thickness of the wood, the bass is a lot lower. One interesting fun music fact is that the F holes on the violin, they actually did a test, and they found that having a circular hole in the middle, like a guitar, would actually make it sound better. But violin traditionalists rebelled, and that's why the violin is the same. Now, let me just show you another interesting thing. Here I have an electric violin. Unlike the traditional instrument, most of the body here is just for show. The sound is created by the string vibrating off the bridge, which has a pickup, and when plugged into an amp, it's amplified through electronic means. If I were to just play a note, A, it would be slightly out of tune, and B, it would be a lot quieter because the majority of the sound doesn't come from the body of the instrument. And the one that I have in the back there is acoustic electric with the guts, with a pickup inside of it, but also the ability to play it aloud. I'm gonna put this back. So that's just a brief overview of how sound works and essentially how we can make sound louder and more different. Does anyone have any questions, comments, snide remarks? No snide remarks, actually.
Someone wants to know what your dog's name is.
Oh, her name is Louie. She's the best. There's also a cat somewhere.
A lot of people were wondering about the washtub bass, but I feel like you handled that already. So somebody's wanting to know if your slides will be posted?
Yes, they should be.
Not a lot of questions, but a lot of love coming through for your presentations. So
awesome. Well, thank you. And if you have any questions, please feel free. I realize I have no contact information. I guess if I go back to the very beginning, you can find me on Twitter at Juno with a 3 and 4 sec for security, or feel free to email me at hack.juno@gmail.com. Hire me for your party to demonstrate NMAP or play the bass. But have a good quarantine. And if that's all, I'll be signing off. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Juno. And next we have More 1204, who's going to talk with us about threat modeling and self-drafted t-shirts.